Hi, welcome to the Elle Russ Show, where I deliver content intended to inspire, educate, and motivate. Engage with me online at elleruss.com and on social media. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, today we're going to talk a little bit about yoga with 2 times Yoga Alliance certified yoga teacher Abi Carver. She also created Yoga 15, which is a comprehensive yoga program online designed to enhance athletic performance and recovery. The videos are 15 minutes at home and they're non-spiritual yoga sessions that focus on the benefits of the practice specifically for athletes. Enjoy the show. Hey Abi, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So let's talk about what you've done with Yoga 15 and making it accessible, and especially for athletes. I think, yoga is a really interesting practice. For those that aren't aware of it, I think a lot of people associate it with some spirituality. And I think some people are even afraid of yoga because of that, if they're spiritual with another religion or something. But for me, that's not to me what it's about. It's a lovely private time. And I look at it like an incredible way to move my body that helps me stay aligned. So if for those that don't really know, what does yoga really mean, or they haven't done it before, can you just kind of give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yes, of course. You're not alone. Yoga is it's a very broad term. It's almost like saying exercise. It involves a broad spectrum which covers all the way from a spiritual practice through to a meditative practice through to a physical practice. All these things come under the umbrella of yoga. And what I have chosen to do is in order to make yoga more accessible to more people like me who are athletic and interested in using yoga to, as you just said, to move better, to feel more aligned in their body, to take the parts of yoga that are most effective for that and start just with those elements. So you could move into a spiritual practice if you wanted to, but at first, I don't feel that you need that element in order to get the benefits from yoga.
How did you get into it?
So I was actually a personal trainer first. And I used to train clients and I enjoyed it very much. But I found that when I wasn't working with them, they would slide back. They would go from being fit and healthy, losing weight. As soon as they were on their own, they weren't able to maintain the practice on their own. And I found this quite frustrating. So I started to take yoga classes that were being taught at the gym where I worked. And I was actually one of those people at first who didn't stick around for Shavasana. I was way too busy, way too anxious to be sitting around waiting while everyone else was lying back. And I don't know what they were thinking about, but I used to leave very early. And so it took me quite a long time to sort of unwind and accept yoga myself. But then I started to feel the benefits myself. It started to balance out the high intensity training that I was doing for myself. And I found that with the yoga, I could do both of them much more successfully. So then when I then took my yoga teacher training. And at the time I was doing a lot of online yoga. And I found that, sort of as you were saying, all the yoga that was online was quite cluttered. You would start by setting an intention, and then maybe there would be some heart opening or some phrases that didn't really make sense to me within an exercise context. And so I decided to design a system that took out the core elements of yoga, stripped it back to sort of the core fundamentals, and design a practice around that. So I started off by cutting the sessions down to 15 minutes. So I take an element of a class and we just work on that for 15 minutes. So within 15 minutes, you get a chance to warm up, do the exercise that you need to do, and cool down. And so I take these 15-minute chunks and I made them very targeted. So we'd be working on either increasing flexibility in the hamstrings or opening up the hips or core strength. And I built up a program that was based on 5 different disciplines, which are strength, mobility, recovery, balance, and flexibility. And so all my videos come under one of those umbrellas.
What are the improvements you've seen or testimonials from athletes who've adopted yoga? I mean, I know for sure, like for me, when I used to do yoga regularly before the pandemic, a lot of people, it was funny, there were a lot of runners in there who like had no mobility, like no flexibility. They had just been like running, and they knew that they needed to fix this sort of tightness in their life. So I've seen a lot of runners go to yoga to sort of correct some of the things that have come up with them as being lifelong runners. What are some of the testimonials or things you've heard back from athletes who have adopted yoga into their life?
Well, it really depends on the sport. So I have quite a lot of mountain bikers who are students of mine. And for them, the standout benefit for them is a relief from lower back pain. So a lot of this comes from building core strength and loosening up the hips, which are often correlated with lower back pain. So that could be one element for one sport. For runners, it might be more to do with preventing injuries. I run not very seriously, but 2 or 3 times a week, and sometimes I can get hip issues, and I'm able to very easily just work those out by stretching out through my yoga practice. So it's mainly relief of pain, prevention of injury, and also just moving better. So with the flows that I call mobility, we're putting our body into better ranges of motion dynamically. So obviously for all sports, we need to be able to move well into different ranges of motion safely. And that's something that you can practice on the mat.
And everybody listening, I mean, we'll put it on the show notes, but you can just go to yoga15.com and we can find out this information to get these little 15-minute yoga videos.
Yes. So I have a membership site there, which has almost 200 videos on there. And they are divided not only by discipline, but also I put them together in courses. So because most of my students aren't really yogis and they need a little bit of guidance, I'll choose which. So for instance, if you play golf, then I'll choose which are going to be the best 15 videos for you to do. And you can work through those. And then if you're a cyclist, they're going to be very different videos. If you're a surfer, they're going to be different as well. Because a lot of this is to do with the posture that you maintain in that sport. So obviously, if you're a surfer, your spine is going to be in extension. If you're a cyclist, it's in flexion. So you're going to need different postures in order to counterbalance what it is that your sport is setting up in your body.
When people are like, okay, I get that I see someone stretching and moving their muscles and doing some body strength stuff with yoga. You can watch someone doing yoga and see how, like, okay, that's, athletically and physically beneficial. But what to you would you say if you had to list like the benefits of yoga? What would you ramble off?
Well, I think the one that most people know about is increasing flexibility. But flexibility isn't necessarily an end in itself. We don't need to necessarily be able to do the splits, for example, but this is sort of a functional flexibility. So being able to get into the positions that your sport or your life requires of you without getting injured. And then you have improved joint mobility. So we're moving the muscles. When we flow through something like a sun salutation, you're moving your muscles dynamically in a different way to how you would in your everyday life and in your sport. So you're improving joint mobility. We build a lot of core strength because we move slowly and we hold poses. So instead of building hypertrophy, which you would build if you were going to the gym, in yoga, we're strengthening the stabilizer muscles. So the muscles around the shoulders, the deep core muscles. That's another benefit. And then obviously we have the mental side. So we're doing a lot of breathing, which can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So we can feel much more calm, much more relaxed. We can use these exercises in our everyday life. So we'll practice on the mat these breathing exercises, diaphragmatic breathing, breathing in and out through the nose. And then when you find yourself in a stress situation, you'll find that you just automatically will be able to access those breathing exercises that you've done. So what else?
Yeah, the breathing, I think I was going to throw in there because it really is a forced focus on that to some degree, to breathe through these poses, breathe through some uncomfortability as well, which is such a great practice because we're often holding our breaths in our real life. So even if you're not doing targeted breath work meditations, this is sort of an automatic there.
Yes, the thing is that in yoga, you're moving very slowly. And it's one of the only things that we do slowly and mindfully. So you actually get an opportunity. It's not, you could do a yoga practice being as mindless about your breath as you could in your everyday life, but you do have an opportunity to focus on it. And although I encourage people to breathe in and out through their nose throughout a practice, that can be as hard as trying to do that when you're running. It's something that takes a lot of practice. So it's just something like meditation where your mind will go off into thoughts, or you'll stop breathing optimally. And it's just a matter of bringing your attention back. So it's just training those systems on the mat. You will improve your breathing capacity because you'll be doing a lot of breathing in and out through the nose, deep into the belly. But it's really more a case of the fact that it's one of the only times that you get to really focus on it for a long period of time.
I want to just say this about yoga that I've noticed over all of the years and all of the rooms and all of the places I've been. I apologize. There's dogs barking in the background, and I don't know what's going on out there. And so what I've noticed is, and so here's the thing. So I've got some injuries, so I do my own thing. And one of the things I suggest to people, at least if you have like a long standing injury that like you know how your body works, if it's a new yoga teacher, I will go up to them before the class and just say, hey, just so you know, I've got this injury. I've made my own adjustments, because what was uncomfortable for me was them coming to the mat, asking me why I was doing something a certain way, or then trying to give me all the advice everyone's gave. Well, try your hands like this or do it like this. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. And I don't want to sit there and draw attention to myself. Not that I care about that, but you know what I mean? Like, and just have a whole discussion about it. So oftentimes I'll say, hey, listen, if you see me doing something a little different, it's because I've got to adjust for what I have going on. And like, I know all of the adjustments and everything, don't need any advice kind of thing. I just kind of prep them before the class so that someone's not spending extra time with me trying to like, they're sit there and they go, okay, so what happened? Or when did you get this injury? You're like, I don't want to, like, this has been for 20 years. So I tell people, if you have an injury, let them know beforehand. And also here's the other thing about being in that room. And I'm sure you've had this even happen, or you've sensed this, which is, this is not a competition with your freaking neighbor on the mat, right? To be embarrassed, like, I'm a very short person. There's some positions I kind of can't get in comfortably. So I have to make a little bit adjustments to allow for some space between things, right? Versus someone who's maybe taller, who's able to get into a certain position. And I think a lot of people go in there and they're looking at what the person over there is doing. And while that can be a good initial go, oh, what's that position? It can also harm you if you're following what other people are doing. I've seen people get injured that way because they feel like they've got to push a pose or get into something and it's not comfortable. So can you speak to that? Because I know this is a thing, that has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. All the yoga that I teach is online. So apart from professional athlete clients, for the majority of my students, it's all done online. And there are obviously benefits and disadvantages to this. But you just brought up a couple of really good examples. One is that it can be, what I think is wonderful about yoga is it's one of the only opportunities you get to really spend time on your own, even if that's just 15 minutes. And that you don't get that if you're in a class. But say you are, in fact, probably 60 to 70% of my students are men. So these are people who do not feel comfortable going to a class. They feel awkward and uncomfortable in the poses. They're not going to be as good as girls for whatever reason, whether that's because we do gymnastics at a younger age, we're more flexible, or they're doing more sports that are contracting their bodies, but they're not as good as us at yoga, and they're probably twice as competitive in some situations. So what you get is the opportunity at home to work on your yoga on your own. And then if you feel emboldened and you start to get really good after 4 or 5 months, you may want to go to a class, and then you feel confident enough to either, as you said, say to the teacher, this is how I feel and this is what I'm going to be doing, or just feel comfortable enough not to mind what happens around them. So I think one of the benefits is that you can get a really private practice going if you're doing things online. You don't get the feedback, but you are able to get the feedback from your own body. So as you said, you have an awareness that because of your particular anatomy, you adjust things in different ways. And so I'm very, very careful to offer modifications so that you can meet the pose wherever it is. It's going to look very different how I do it to how a 6'5" man who weighs 4 times as much as me, who's been doing golf all his life. We're all going to look different in the poses. And actually, it's not really about looking like the pose. It's about using the pose to get what you need. So as well as that, I'll always say what it is we're trying to do in this pose. So I'll say this pose stretches out your calves and hamstrings and opens up your hips. So you know where it is that you're supposed to be feeling it, or you'll feel this in the outside of your right hip. And then you can adjust the pose accordingly. And you get that interoceptive feedback from your body, which I think is really amazing. And again, is something that we don't get in any other of the disciplines or hobbies that we practice.
Now you have over 30 courses to choose from that you've designed for athletes and, in all sports at every level of availability. You even have like a COVID recovery 14-day. I mean, you've got so many things to choose from. Tell us about some of the options you have on yoga15.com because it's vast.
Yeah, I I sort of created a kind of a Netflix library of yoga videos to begin with. So we've got 200 videos, and that can be obviously a little bit intimidating, especially if you're new to the practice. You don't know which skill it is you need to work on or what your level of ability is. So I have these 5 different disciplines, and then we have 3 levels of ability. So we have beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And it means advanced in terms of yoga skills rather than your fitness skills. So you could be an elite athlete, but a beginner yogi, if you see what I mean. So what I've done with the courses is put together the best 15 or 21 or 30 videos for a specific purpose. So sometimes we break that down by sport. So I've got videos on there for courses on there for motocross, for example, or for golf, for cycling, running, for hiking, for a number of different sports. And then we have 30-day programs that are for specific anatomical issues. So maybe to improve functional flexibility in your hamstrings, or we could work on there's some courses which are a mix as well, because actually it's the variation in your movement, which is actually one of the best ways of preventing and healing from injury. It's actually that we do the same patterns all the time that gets us into trouble. So even just by moving in different ways, we start to heal. So there are programs on there which would be maybe core strength and general flexibility. There's courses that are just based on different things. The COVID one is all done on your back. So I have a number of videos where there's no downward dogs in them. You're lying on your back and stretching your hips or stretching your back in all sorts of different ways without actually having to put in much effort. So yeah, those are the different courses. There are also different styles. So for instance, the last 2 series that I filmed, one is called Yin Yoga, which you may have heard of, where you hold poses for up like 10 breaths and up, basically. And those practices are really, really effective for athletes, especially with really, really deeply held tension. So there's a series of Yin videos on there. And the last videos I filmed are cool down videos. So I've actually, even though my style of yoga is very stripped back, these are really, really stripped back. There's no nonsense in these ones. You just get straight into it. There's no final resting pose. There's no shavasana. There's no breathing at the beginning. Basically what this is you've finished your run and you just want to go straight into the stretches which are specific for that sport. So I have a cool down for running, I have one for cycling, I have a different one for mountain biking, one for boxing. And these are, so say you do leg day at the gym, you don't just want to do a generic yoga class after that to cool down. You want to really stretch out the quads, the glutes, the muscles that you've been working. So I also have a series of cool down videos, and yeah, lots of different ways that you can design your program.
Well, and everyone too, she gives everyone a 14-day free trial. So go to yoga15.com. And as well, this is something that I think being home a lot or us giving up gym memberships during this, pandemic time, and some people not feeling comfortable with going back to the gyms, all you need is a mat and a computer. How easy is that? And I love that you break it down into, palatable timeframes for people that are also just new to it and getting going so they can sort of experiment a little bit. I will say that whenever I haven't done yoga for a while, even though I'm always active, let's say I don't go to yoga for a while, the first class back, a couple of days, I'm sore because I'm working those muscles I haven't. So I would just say, hey, go easy, everybody, because sometimes even when you do, a small thing, you can really need a day or two to recover at first if you haven't jumped into it for a while.
But I feel exactly the same. For me, if I have been neglecting yoga for whatever reason, I mean, you really only need to do a little bit every day. But say I've been traveling or visiting lots of friends, then how it will feel in my body is just a bit of a tightness. And again, you just do a couple of sessions and you get back to to sort of a base level again. But yeah, it's always with every new exercise. If you haven't been going to the gym and you start doing leg day again, you're going to feel sore. It's just your body needs that time to reaccustom itself to the exercise.
Well, I love what you've done. Thank you so much for making this as accessible to everyone all over the world and online. And I like what you said too. Like you said, a lot of the male clients as well, not only just competitive, but they don't, a lot of people are like, I don't want to show up. Or here's the other thing. Let's say, listen, some people have shame around where their body's at. They don't want to be in yoga pants, or they might not feel, they're a little bit self-conscious. So this is the perfect way to start getting into shape, or at least getting those muscles moving, flexibility, even if it's not about getting into shape and it's about something else. This is so perfect because it's from the privacy of your own home. So thank you so much for creating this vast library for everyone. And please, everyone, we'll put it in the show notes, but go to yoga15.com and you can learn all about Abi there and all of her programs. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, or something we haven't brought up that you offer?
No, I think that about covers it. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And everybody, again, yoga15.com, jump into it. It will be so much better for your life. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time. Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.